Hello and welcome to the fourth day of the virtual Camino in Croatia at the island of Krk. We'll start our journey where we left off tomorrow at the charming hilltop town of Dobrin, with a beautiful panoramic view of the island. So let's see the videos that we weren't able to see yesterday. And now it works. So yesterday we started our journey at Omišalj, at the northern part of the island of Krk. We followed the road, the only section of this Camino route which is following mostly the main road. Every other is a forest path or a stone pebble path. We passed through forests, heading towards the sea, then reached first town with a bar, bakery, and a supermarket, therefore a place to relax a little bit. There it is. And the cove called Soline, with a healing mud, especially good for rheumatism and disease of skin. Then we went slightly uphill, entered the forest again, and pretty quickly behind a corner, coming up just about now, off we went to the city of Dobrin. Let's hear more about the city. Of course, this is a stamp. So let's hear more about the city.
Dobar dan. Moje ime je Boris Latinović i želim vam poželjeti dobrodošlicu na područje općine Dobrin. Trenutno se nalazimo u samom mjestu Dobrin na 198 metara nadmorske visine na vidiku Susedina, za koga se pruža predivan pogled na okolna mjesta, rijeku, Opatiju i samo uvalu Soline. U uvali Soline nalazi se ljekovito blato koje pomaže pri liječenju kožnih i reumatskih oboljenja. U mjestu Dobrin nalazi se 2 crkve i 3 kapelice koje trenutno nisu u sakralnoj funkciji. Župna crkva Svetog Stjepana spominje se 1100. godine te ima bogatu sakralnu zbirku, a posebno se ističe relief papala na glavnom oltaru iz 17. stoljeća s prikazom krunidbe Blažene Djevice Marije, slikara Paola Venecijana. Druga crkva Svete Trojice, pučkog naziva Sveti Anton, nalazi se u samom centru Dobrina. Danas služi kao izložbeni prostor gdje možete vidjeti sakralnu zbirku koja je skupljena na prostoru općine Dobrin. Nadam se da sam vam malo približio u ovih minutu vremena što možete zanimljivoga pogledati na području Dobrinja, te se nadam da se u budućnosti vidimo u samom mjestu Dobrinja. Bog, sretno, vidimo se.
Dobrin is indeed a charming town, as you can see from these photos, with a wonderful, wonderful view. This especially is a great belvedere, a lodge, medieval one, next to the church entrance. And let's see a little bit more about the city itself. So, as we leave Dobrin, our journey continues. A new day on the Camino, a new dawn on the Camino, and the arrows who are pointing the way. These photos were made last October when we marked the first section of the Camino in Croatia, right here at the island of Krk. Pretty soon after leaving Dobrin, we come across a church from the 12th century called St. Vitus.
Nalazimo se na glavnoj cesti, kamo je skretanje za crkvicu Svetog Vida, koja se nalazi na otprilike kilometar udaljenosti od centra samog mjesta Dobrinj. Tu je postavljeno 2000. godine povodom 900-godišnjice pronalaska i pisanja listine slavnog Dragoslava. Postavljeno je velika kamena ploča na kojoj su glagolskim slovima napisane tekst sa listine slavnog Dragoslava. Crkvica Svetog Vida spada u najstarije dobrinjske crkve. Pretpostavlja se da je sagrađena 1100. godine, a za njenog graditelja navodi se kao slavni Dragoslav. U ovoj crkvici djelovala je bratovština Svetog Vida, koja je poslije spojena sa bratovštinom Svetog Stjepana i drugim bratovštinama. U crkvi se prestala održavati misa 1790. godine, te je od tada bila propuštena propadanju, a sve je zatim 1940 se obnovila i vraćena je u bogoslužje. Riječ je o jednobrojnoj srednjovjekovnoj, točnije romaničkoj građevini s visokim kamenim zvonikom na ulaznom zapadnom pročelju, te crkva ima uzdužni oblik i pravilne orijentacije, sa apsidom izbačenom na istoku. Na bočnom, sjevernom i južnom zidu nalazi se po jedan stilski jednostavan prozor s romaničkim polukružnim natvrtnikom. Toranje visine 14 metara.
Location quite suitable for photos that our pilgrims took advantage of. Now, this ancient path where local peasants, fishermen, noblemen, pilgrims walked for centuries is now treaded by modern pilgrims. Naturally, arrows are pointing the way, marked with a typical Croatian squares symbolizing the Croatian coat of arms. The forest is getting thicker and thicker, creating almost like a fairy tale atmosphere. Wonderful in the summer because the trees provide shade from the heat. But the fairy tale atmosphere is just the beginning as we come across an ancient forest. Of course, first we'll take our stand at this location. This is something kind of scenery which is completely different than the kind of scenery you'll come across in the Mediterranean islands or coastline. It almost feels like a forest from Lord of the Rings. One could almost expect a hobbit to pop up from one of these trees. Old river channels, and there are a couple of waterfalls still, not as large, but still present in these parts. The whole mystical atmosphere is enhanced as we come across the next attraction on the Camino Krk, which is the abandoned village of Dolovo. Practically hidden in the dense forest and barely visible from the air, this settlement in 18th century had 128 inhabitants. Since 1981, nobody lives here anymore. It's amazing how quickly the nature in about 40 short years completely took over once prosperous and thriving village. There is, of course, even a legend tied to these parts, that the girls from this village were well known on the entire island for their beauty. So the legend says you might come across one of these sleeping beauties in these moss-covered stone houses. But it serves as a very vivid reminder how time quickly passes by, how constructs of man have such a short duration in terms of history, how once thriving village where people were born, they celebrated, they died, they cried. Now only a moss-covered stone bears witness to the fact that somebody once lived here. The Camino continues on, going a little bit downhill. And this is the part of the section where pilgrims were doing the typical and well-known Camino song, Ultrea. Now, the next section will tell us more about the Camino music and how it brings a special kind of flavor to the Camino. This, the first section, the first song that you will hear is the original or the first ever performance of Ultrea in Croatian language. You'll be, of course, you'll have some difficulty following the lyrics, but I'm sure you will find the atmosphere interesting. That was the performance of a group of Croatian pilgrims who walked the Camino in 2018. One of them, a professional musician, was inspired when she arrived at Santiago de Compostela, and after receiving her Compostela, she set aside for a couple of hours and wrote a song. Now, again, the lyrics will be difficult to follow if you don't speak Croatian, but the music and the atmosphere is quite enchanting. Make me to know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your paths. Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are my God and my salvation. Tješi me i grije, znam da nisam sam, da tišina s tobom ostavlja traga. Moje srce gori i nestaje tama. Putovima tvojim koračam svakog dana, u stopama tvojim sigurna sam jadna. Vidim u daljini sunca tvoje zraka, grije i grli srce siromana. Svu bjedu svoju dajem, ti govoriš tišinu, suze moje tope, u suzama se tvojim, dok miluješ mi lice, nježno i tiho, u tišini s tobom ostajem zauvijek. stopama tvojim koračam svakog dana. U stopama tvojim ja sigurna sam jaka. Vidim u daljini sunca tvojeg zraka. Grije i grli moje srce siromaha. Tu bjedu svoju dajem, ti govoriš tišinom. Suze moje tope, u suzama se tvojim, dok miluješ mi lice, nežno i tiho, u tišini s tobom ostajem zauvijek. Tišini s tobom ostajem zauvijek. U tišini s tobom ostajem zauvijek. U tišini s tobom ostajem zauvijek. Show me, O Lord, your paths. Teach me to your ways. Hope you enjoyed the music, and allow me to bid you a welcome to our viewers from Portugal, Bom Caminho, from Austria, Guten Weg, from Ireland, Had Mille Falche, and Buen Camino, and from Canada, good morning and Buen Camino. We continue our journey on the Camino Krk, but of course, the next stamp on the way with a symbol of Gradec, an ancient medieval castles of Frankopan dukes who used to rule not just the entire island, but the surrounding area in Croatia, one of the more prestigious and more powerful Croatian noble families. The road in this section is quite spectacular, the sun slowly glimpsing through the tall trees, and of course the arrows we left behind us to mark the way for future pilgrims. Now, you can easily recognize the pilgrims who've been to Santiago by the shells they carry on their backpacks. And as you may know, one of the many legends that is associated with Santiago or St. James has connections with shells. So according to one of the legends, when the sarcophagus with the body of St. James was washed over near Cape Finisterre, it was covered completely in shells. Shell was a symbol of St. James and a symbol of medieval pilgrims. In Middle Ages, people did not receive a written Compostela as they do today. The shell served as a symbol that they managed to do a pilgrimage to Santiago as a testament to their effort upon returning home. The shell was also a very practical tool for pilgrims in Middle Ages. You could use it to grab water from the spring or a nearby river. You could use it to have a meal. Nowadays, of course, it's very practical as a sort of a cup at Bodega Irache, where you can have some free vino tinto. Shell, of course, is the logo of the Camino de Santiago that you will see on the markers near the road, with the yellow ends marking different routes, different Camino routes, all leading to Santiago de Compostela. This section passes a village Unfortunately, there is no bar, supermarket, anything like that. But the custom that we will be introducing on the island of Kirk as well is, of course, Donativo, that we'll talk about a little bit more. The ruins of the old fort, abandoned in the 15th century, which served as the ancestral seat of the Dukes of Frankopan. You can see a bit of this medieval atmosphere in the reenactors that stage a performance here during the summer. Of course, Donativo is a custom which is very much symbolizes the spirit of the Camino. The first image is, of course, I'm sure most of you recognize who walked the Camino from Granon. To me personally, that is the best albergue on the Camino. Not because it provides a luxury accommodation, it's basically a gym mat on the floor, but because of a spectacular atmosphere it provides. When you arrive at Granon, you are told, welcome. Feel like you are at your own home. Everything that we provide is provided free of charge. However, if you wish to make a donation to provide food and comfort for pilgrims who will arrive tomorrow, you are, of course, free to do so. The communal dinner that is prepared every night is funded by the pilgrims who left their donations the day before. And the pilgrims who are eating that dinner are leaving their donations for people who will be arriving the next day. This, of course, is the location for one of the best known Camino legends. David is a guy who lives on the Camino. He's the guy in a purple hat who basically spends his time helping pilgrims. Usually when visitors from who are a little bit more material arrive, they ask, well, how much for these fruit, for these teas, and various other foods that David provides? Once I heard him reply, nothing, you pay zero. My only payment is that you are happy. Now, David has a very interesting motto on his stand. In Spanish, it says, La llave de la esencia es la presencia. The key to the essence is a presence, a present moment. A very good philosophy, I would say. Now, because David doesn't leave the impression that he cares about money, quite the opposite. The donations here are extremely generous. So usually when you come across this location, you'll find the best buffet, better even at some five-star hotels. The selection and the quantity of food provided is quite spectacular. Food, of course, is not the only gift given on the Camino. This is a location of a small chapel dedicated to the miraculous medal of Our Lady, where a priest was giving out blessings to all that asked, or all those who wish to take it. It's amazing how many people who aren't religious stop by for a blessing here. The way continues onwards to the sea, and it's a little bit interesting how people react each time they see the sea. Suddenly, leaving the dense forest and seeing the sea for the first time, it feels like you're again connected to the world. It feels almost like you're part of something bigger, something more connected to the rest of the world. The arrows, of course, are still pointing the way. And after hitting a wonderful and a quite popular beach near the coast, there is a pretty wide coastal promenade which leads us to the end of our Camino route for today, the charming city of Verbenik, which arises behind one of the curves, another magical-like apparition. Now, Verbnik is best known for its spectacular wine. Yet another connection between the island of Krk and Camino de Santiago. The wine here is not Vino Tinto, a very popular red wine in Spain. The wine here is white, but it's prestigious so-called noble wine. But first, let's see, how did we arrive here? So after leaving Dobrin, we followed the road a little bit, and then we took an intersection next to the church. Onwards through the forest. Somewhere around here is that abandoned village, a fairy tale village we saw previously. And the route continues through the forest, passing this ancient castle, heading on towards the coast. The legend says that each time a nobleman was wed, the route from this castle, Gradec, to the city of Verbnik, which you are seeing right now, was covered with tapestries, and that the bride had to touch each tapestry as they were walking by. It gives you an idea how rich and prosperous was this island in the Middle Ages. As you can see in the traces of its culture, that will explore very much so in the city of Verbnik. And here we are. Of course, it'll take us in real life much more than, we're moving much more slowly than 19.8 kilometers per hour. But this section is about 17 kilometers. Not a great stretch for experienced Camino walkers. We're getting our next stand, and we'll see more where we came. This is a brief introduction of the city by the tourist board director for the city of Verbnik. A labyrinth of narrow streets, prominent bell tower. It's a masterpiece of nature and construction. Inhabited since early Stone Age, and first written records date back to 1100.
Vrhnik je dobio 1388. godine. Stoljećima je Vrhnik davao veliki broj duhovnih zvanja.
Through centuries, Vrhnik was famous for providing a huge number of priests. The current cardinal from Croatia and the first primate of Croatia was born here as well. It also served as a cultural center, nurturing unique glagolic script, which was uniquely developed in Croatia. This was a place with rich culture. You can see these narrow streets twisting and turning. It's very easy to get lost, but it's also quite charming because the city is so tiny. And for me personally, this is one of the more beautiful and definitely more enchanting places on the entire island and the Camino route. This, for example, is the narrowest street in the world, only 43 centimeters wide. So if you're carrying a backpack, you might have problem passing this particular street. And we'll see further. Here is a panoramic view from the sea. Of course, local entertainment, cards and wine, or folklore dances, traditional instruments that we saw on one of the previous Camino stands. And this is that narrow street I told you about. So it's actually quite challenging. If you're carrying something on you, you might get stuck. It wouldn't be the first time. You can see the narrow streets simply magical. The authentic tradition and the flowers are visible at almost every step. This is a unique library and museum of printing at Verbnik. two priests who lived in 15th century and made one of the earliest printing presses here in Croatia, printing mostly religious books with the unique glagolic script.
Pop Blaž nadgledao je 1493. godine tiskanje po njemu nazvano Baromićevog brevijara. Godine 1494. u osnovanoj tiskari u Senju otisnut je senjski glagolski misal. Drugo izdanje misala po zakonu...
Croatia was actually one of the unique places in Christendom that before Second Vatican Council was given official permit from the Pope to serve Mass in the vernacular, in the local language, rather than Latin. So the culture was of course tied to the tradition that Church preserved. This, for example, you will see in this video, is a library of the family Vitezic from late 19th century, preserving some extremely valuable manuscripts
od dvojice braće, krčkog biskupa doktora Ivana Vitezića i njegova brata doktora Dinka Vitezića,
as well as items from those ages.
Predstavnika istarskih Hrvata u Bečkom parlamentu. Knjižnicu su namijenili Vrbenčanima kako bi napredovali u naobrazbi.
The library was open to the public in late 19th century to promote culture and literacy in the town. This is an 18th century atlas by Johann David Keller, and the only two remaining copies exist in the world. One is here, and another one is at Cambridge University. Each page of this atlas is a separate masterpiece.
Etnička naseljenost pojedinih krajeva, slike ondašnjih jedrenjaka, raznih tipova naoružanja, odlikovanja, kao i zvježđa.
You can see it in the images here, truly wonderful. The glagolic script is visible all around town, testifying to its culture. But pilgrims need more than culture, they need some fuel to get them going for the next day. So let's take at least a virtual toast until we can actually have a real one of the famous Verbenik Žlahtina wine, or in local dialect, a noble wine. A wine that through sweat of the local peasants and farmers and winemakers provided the basis for the local prosperity and for ability to develop these cultural activities. As you can see, the local saying is that a day without wine is like a day without sunshine. The wine is white, light, and with a unique bouquet, made even better. This, for example, is the new experiment that the local winery did with the champagne brand Valamet, which was stored and allowed to ferment 30 meters above the sea. The bottle, as you can see, has traces of the sea bass and which accumulated during its stay in that cage. And a final greeting from the tourist board director.
Dobro nam došli, dragi prijatelji. Nadam se da ste se ugodno proveli i da se uskoro vidimo opet.
One of the plans we have in developing Camino in Croatia is to have something similar like Bodega Irache, so that pilgrims with a valid pilgrim passport can try a little bit of this fabulous local wine. That ends our journey, but not our program for today. We still have a spiritual reflection prepared by or read by our Dominican friar.
Pazite dakle kako slušate. Većina hodočasnika može svjedočiti da su tijekom puta susreli nekoga tko im je tijekom neke dionice puta ispripovjedio svoj život ili one dijelove života koji ga muče i o kojima želi otvoriti dušu. Hodočašća su prava mjesta za to, no zato je potrebno naći čovjeka koji zna slušati. Tada se otvara dobra komunikacija onoga koji govori i onoga koji sluša. I često činimo grešku misleći da je potrebno onome tko se izrekao dijeliti savjete. To što smo saslušali čovjeka već je puno. Dali smo samo do znanja da nam je njegov govor važan i da ga razumijemo i prihvaćamo. Kako ti slušaš ljude? Znaš li prihvaćati drugoga ako je od tebe različit? Znaš li slušati?
And before we bid you farewell for tonight, let's hear a testimony from the pilgrim. Maria walked the Camino last year to mark her round birthday, but to remove herself from everyday life long enough and far enough to see where she's now in her life. Camino for her is primarily encounter, a daily walk with strangers that later became friends, sharing experiences and difficulties, joys together. It all left a huge impression on me. I enjoyed the nature in the sunsets and sunrises, from the sunflower fields to mountains. I had an opportunity to spend time in silence, to encounter myself and my God. Camino taught me that life can be so simple and so joyful. I also wish you that your Camino experience be as great, and buen camino. That ends our journey for today. This is the Pilgrim Passport, the e-version of the Pilgrim Passport for today. In a couple of minutes on YouTube link and on the YouTube link commentaries and on the Facebook post that you were using to watch this video, you'll receive a link how to apply and register for this Pilgrim Passport. Once you collect the stamps, you'll be eligible to get electronic version of the Compostela, a Croatian version of the Compostela for Camino Krk, while the original will wait for you on the island of Krk when travel is no longer restricted. Have a good night and buen camino de la vida.